if you look at some of the data and research that I've had the fortunate or unfortunate to be a part of, one of the consistent things I hear is Democrats do not fight like Republicans. We don't punch back. We don't push back. Now, we're punching above our weight because we're in the minority, blah, 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 but it does not mean that we cannot fight. And I would also just say to you, as you're messaging outward, if you will, into the land or into the ecosystem, find things that people care about. And don't assume because you care about them that other people care about them. Whether it's chicken wings for sports fans, whether it's groceries for the working mom, whether it's the price of your cell phone or electricity, because that's up 10% around the country. Like, find things that common ground that everyday people care about and that's shareable and digestible to every single person.
All right, Catherine, give it a try.
Am I stable?
You're stable now.
Okay, now just go like this if you see something weird. Is that good? Yeah, or like this, like this.
That works.
That works. Like, hey, Susan Wagner's here from Our Democracy. It's our national show. Welcome. We're talking about the new normal or not so normal and how not to accept this new normal, fight back against it. So today I want to start out with everybody and, hey, what's your normal look like today? Or maybe you're not so normal. I'll start with Fennell.
Yeah, I was probably not the one to start with today. Nothing is normal for me today. So I would say normal is waking up and finding crazy in the news. That's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Normal is trying to go to any social event right now and carry on a conversation like it's nothing is any big deal right now. Like, how are we even playing poker, going to garden club, doing dinner parties right now? My head is exploding. The house is on fire and I can't talk about anything else. I'm probably going to lose friends. That's it.
Susan.
Well, today's my 43rd wedding anniversary. And my father-in-law, it was fond of saying nobody would have predicted that you guys would have lasted this long. So I guess that's a little not normal. I would say for me, unfortunately, the normal is, and it's something I've seen on a couple of different podcasts recently, is that people are tired. And that as you get more and more tired, it's just harder to reach down deep and have the energy to keep fighting. And, one of my favorite expressions in life is nothing succeeds like success, but there's the opposite of that as well. So that's my new normal.
Well, I want to say that what we do know with all this crazy stuff going on, I love the governor, J.D. Pritzker, coming out. And I think the point is that when it happens, when something isn't, like the mass shooting we saw, that's kind of America's new normal. And when we see the governor, Gavin Newsom, just say, I'm sick, and basically Republicans just punched him about what's happening. This should not be the new normal. When you troops up and down the East Coast and the plan to put them in more places, transportation person, that we have to right away punch back and remind people this isn't normal, right? I think that's really important for now.
Yeah, so this is what I love about the new normal, all of the things that are really horrible that are not normal. But I'm going to tell you something that I think is not normal for us, and it's really good. So last night when we had our Power Up call for women, I had family members on it, and I asked them what was the thing that they took away, the thing that they remembered. And what they remembered was Andrea Miller saying, women can win this because all the Republicans who are running ain't shit. Now, I say that word because that's what they said. I'm with her. That's what they all said. And that's important because when we talk about this Iowa race that Caitlin Duray just won by 11 points in a Republican, it was a district that Trump won by 11 points. So that can be our new normal. And what's really interesting about that, even better, is that what she said is Iowans are sick of Republicans and they figured out that they're self-serving liars who will kick their constituents under the bus. And what that is, that's some loud power talk. And that's going to be our new normal. It's not stepping back, not holding back, but being loud and proud about who we are and loud about who the Republicans are. That's our new normal.
And I just keep repeating down here with our coalition that the new normal is being engaged in democracy. And we need to convince our friends and family that that's the new normal. It was expected 250 years ago that we were all going to participate in this, and we've fallen off. This is the new normal. Get off the effing couch.
Right. I'll add to that, just say new normal is that this is not great. You know, people have to realize that what Trump is doing to this country, MAGA, all of that, this is not great. We know what great is, and I'm not saying we came from great, but what is happening in our country right now is not great. And I think, you know, I had Tom Suozzi on yesterday for It Needs to Be Said, and he said,
a person from New York.
Yeah, he's a congressman that won in a special election after we got rid of Santos. But here's a very interesting point. We all know this. Dukakis ran a terrible campaign. He still got 40% of the vote. Goldwater ran a terrible campaign. He still got 40% of the vote. So what Tom was saying is that there's that 20% that you have to be able to persuade. It's just the way it is now in politics.
Right.
And I think that 20% knows it's not great, that the new normal is not great.
Oh.
And I think that that's a powerful message for now.
Yeah, I agree. And so the thing to uplift us to our normal, I love that. I want a couple shout outs to Shenandoah Indivisible gets the prize today. They got an article paper. Our friend Mark Pierce wrote this article, and they're the ones protesting on the bridge, and they've been trying to shut them down by the police showing up, doing new ordinances about protests. So what we do know, we are seeing our new normal now, and that's Trump is moving to take over the election, and he wants to shut down protesting by doing this executive orders and let us pay attention to what we need to do in that space. And I'll also say, I saw on the David Pakman show, that also a new normal. I'd like to see Abigail out more on those podcasts. She freaking brought the fight. I was so watching that. I'll put that link, I think, into the chat. Watch her just talk about redistricting Virginia, and she said word. Abigail said the F word. So anyway, I thought, woo! And I also want to say Taylor is engaged. That was fun. And I think we embrace some of this stuff. And then it's Labor Day. Happy Labor Day, Union brothers and sisters. Make sure that Indivisible will be a new normalist, making sure that we're visible everywhere. With that, I'm going to turn it to Carrie to get us the business started and get the show started. We're a little bit behind. Let me just warn everybody now, hold on to your pants. It's Friday. It's Freaky Friday.
Well, I just want to say, yeah, I'm gonna help Catherine out with the show business today because I'm slightly less unstable these days. But I just want to say, welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. Today is August 29th, 2025. You are on the Friday Power Lunch. We are your hosts, bringing you the guests, the issues, and the action fueling the grassroots community across Virginia and coast to coast. Susan Wagner is here because this is the last Friday of the month, so it's our national show. Today, we're talking about this isn't normal. Let's talk about it. We got a lot to talk about. We cannot normalize what is happening. So just remember, we've got a few rules of the road. If you're not kind, we will kick you out. That includes on the chat because we like to monitor it. And if you've got great questions, comments, you want to drop links in the chat, that is your space. And we always ask you to stay for the after chat. That is also your space. That's where we turn off the video recording and we can really talk it normal and honest with some of our guests who will stay after. So welcome. We're happy that you're here today. Fennell, did you want to cover the preview of the guests?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Well, I'm so excited for all of our guests, but we have first up today, we're going to have Antjuan Seawright. He is the founder and CEO of Blueprint Strategy LLC. And he's going to have a lot to say today about Trump's illegal action and his weaponization of the National Guard against all the blue cities. And so I can't wait to hear that. But he's going to give us some facts and examples of how we can neutralize these Republican talking points. And if you guys really want to see him in action, he was on News Nation with Ken Cuccinelli, and so he took him to school. And we're also going to have James Walkinshaw. He's a candidate for Congressional CD12 in Fairfax County, and he's going to talk about his campaign. We all know that early voting is open, will be open September the 9th for his race. And then we're going to have you, Carrie. She's the leader and founder of COVA Coalition. I know you, and the Friday Power Lunch MC. And she's going to be talking about the allied groups in coastal Virginia and the plan that they have for organizing. And you guys have to see Carrie in action. She can bring it down. And then we're going to have the Persisterhood Project, the oral history and co-directors Robbin Warner from Postcards for Virginia, which is all awesome. Susan Wagner from Markers for Democracy, also awesome. And she's a Substack. It needs to be said. Susan, I want to be on the show. We can talk about that. And the Grassroots Connector. And we're also going to have Timmons, and she is a communications artist and a playwright. And we're going to learn about her recent play, It's My Party, and how she uses theater as a way to preserve and tell stories. So.
Sounds like a great show. Let's get it going.
Let's get it going.
Let's get it going. And I'm first up. So I am first up with Antjuan, who I just told you about. So Antjuan, can we bring Antjuan on so we can get started? There is so much to talk about.
It's good to be back.
Oh, hi, Antjuan. There you are. We are so happy to have you back. I was just bragging about you, of course, and News Nation. I did watch that. And it was pretty awesome. But there is a lot going on in DC. We had Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan on last night, and she just said, it's just bad. And so you know how bad it is. So let's just start with what you're seeing in DC, and then we'll come back to what we're going to do about it.
Well, first of all, Washington, D.C. means dysfunctional city in my mind. So this conversation we're having about Washington is certainly not anything new, but it's certainly true. And so here's my message to you all is that don't worry about what's happening on K Street, but focus on Main Street and my street, because that's where the people's power lies. And that's where elections are won and lost. And that's where democracy dies or lives, survives or thrives. And on that note, let me just say about this extraordinary group of women that you all continue to put together. When the Nova women lead, the Commonwealth succeed. And so I want to let you all know that you are a powerful, intentional, thoughtful, and strategic group of minds that not only the Commonwealth needs, but this country needs. So keep doing what you all are doing. There's so much going on around us, by us, near us, that we have to often take a step back from the buffet table and try to rest our souls and rest our spirits. But I don't want us to get distracted in this moment. We find ourselves talking about DC crime. We find ourselves talking about a number of other distraction balls that Donald Trump is throwing down the plate in order for the American people and the media to swing about. But usually Trump does that when he is in need of political rehab. Donald Trump is enjoying piss poor numbers among his base and among the country. I think his approval rating is at the lowest it's ever been, less than 37%. And that's because he's failed the American people, especially his base, on quality of life issues, starting with affordability. He promised to cut car insurance in half. He promised to bring down mortgage rates. He promised to bring down life insurance. He promised to bring up the economic well-being and improve the quality of life and economic bill of health of Americans. And he's failed on that. And so now he's trying to do everything to distract people. And as I said on News Nation, and I said on CNN this morning, not a few hours ago, is that when Donald Trump is in trouble, he turns to a few things to rest his political butt on: racism, patriotism, immigration, crime, and public safety. And that's why you see him trying to pivot to those things. But make no mistake, the prices of gas, goods, and groceries are still high as hell. The rent is still high. The price of fresh and dry Food and veggies up 30%, the highest it's been in 3 years. Inflation is up and the cost of living cannot keep up. Wages are down and the unemployment numbers are as high as they've ever been in modern history for Black Americans, including the 330,000 Black women who are no longer in the federal government. And so we have to be intentional in keeping our eye on the prize, as John Lewis would say, and talking about the things that matter to everyday people. And that starts with quality of life issues. And finally, before I take a breath and let you jump back in to guide me for now, is that don't take your eyes away from the big ugly bill. Still the largest cut in healthcare in the history of this country, still the largest takeaway of supplemental nutritious assistance programs in this country. And that does not mean poor working people in the ghetto or in the hood. That's seniors, that's veterans, that's teachers, and that's anyone who will forget about trying to make ends meet. They're putting two ends together, hoping they meet. We have a lot of things to message on in terms of the bad of this administration, but we have to be narrowly focused and message on the things that are going to send people to the polls and get them to mobilize, energize, and eventually turn out.
So that's fantastic, Antjuan. And so we're probably going to need to get together and sort of figure out how to package this, because one of the things that we've been talking about is that we're going to stop complaining about what we think isn't happening in DC in Congress, and we're going to figure out how to do it for ourselves. There's a song like that, but we're going to figure that out. And so I think this conversation that we're having with you is part of that. And so we all think that these things that you're talking about, we're trying to figure out how do we get them to get to people in a way that they are really hearing it. Because as someone, Susan said, and Carrie as well, people are completely distracted. They're going along with their lives like nothing is happening. So that means that somehow we are not pushing down hard enough to say, wait a minute, your hair should be on fire, and it's not on fire. Well, so help me with that.
Well, part of it is that we've got to oversimplify messaging, and we've got to have message discipline. The one thing we suffer the most, and where we're hemorrhaging at as Democrats or even good people, is that message discipline. We tend to chase the news cycle instead of framing the news cycle. For instance, if we're going to talk about crime, let's talk about the fact that major crime is down in most major cities across the country because of the bipartisan legislation ushered in by President Biden and the House Democratic majority in the Safer in Communities Act. First time in 30 years we did major gun legislation, but in that legislation we were able to give cities and municipalities and organizations money so they can deal with gun violence and crime in a real authentic way. That's the reason crime is down. The reason crime is up in Washington, D.C. is because Donald Trump and his administration are full of criminals. We've got to oversimplify the messaging so much so that it reaches people where they are. Now, that does not mean we can post ourselves or position ourselves as anti-crime or anti-police. I think that's the mistake, and that's the corner they want to back us in. You can be pro-public safety, but anti the misappropriation or the militarization of law enforcement. And I think that's where we are. National Guard folks who are trained and frontline fighters are not trained to deal with crime or to carry guns and so forth. One wrong incident, one wrong attempt at an incident can mean a death sentence for a young Black boy who simply just misinterpreted how a National Guards person may have positioned themselves in a conversation.
So Antjuan, so all of that sounds great. But if I was having a conversation, now I think there are some audiences that I can get to that conversation with, but there are probably others which would say, okay, yeah, you said a lot, but how can I even make that make sense? Because if you talk to some people, they'll say, well, yeah, well, there is crime in DC, and you're telling me that it's down 30%, but that didn't help me in my neighborhood. So how do I even simplify that even more so that folks get the fact that what they're seeing in Washington, DC is wrong? And they could say, well, why didn't the mayor do something before? So how do I do that?
I think you can say to them, if Republican presidents and Republican leaders were serious about crime, why did not they invite local mayors to the table in order to have a conversation and allocate them and ask them what they need to continue to fight crime? No one is saying crime is not a problem, but when folks try to put a color on crime or act as if crime is only a problem in predominantly Black populated cities or cities that have African American leaders, I think that's where the issue is. And dealing with crime does not involve the military. That with the way the president is scaling up the operation in Washington, D.C., it's over $1 million a day. No city in the country can afford to scale up at that capacity. So what happens when we have to get back to reality? That's where you've got to usher in legislative partners and usher in other government partners to deal with crime in an authentic way. And the way you do that is by electing folks at the local level to deal with local issues. That's why the Commonwealth election in November 2025 perhaps is more consequential than any other race in the country. We have more mayors on the ballot in 2025 than any other cycle, more school board members on the ballot than any other cycle, county commission and so forth. In 45 states around this country, there are over 100,000 things on the ballot, including redistricting in California and other places. We've got to hyper focus our attention and efforts on local elections because that's where our grassroots power lies.
Okay. And so I love that. And I think that does get to the heart of what's happening because there are so many folks like us who are around this phone. We do tend to focus on what we hear nationally in the news, while all of my Facebook friends are talking about birthdays and anniversaries. And so any kind of thought about how we might do that better to help focus them better to say, I mean, I want to say to them, I see your birthday. I'm real excited about the party that you had, but did you know blah, blah, blah is happening, but I feel kind of bad to do that. So can I do that?
Well, you can't force anything on anybody.
Right.
You know, my mom and dad always says you can't force love where love does not want to go, but you can introduce information.
Okay.
And when you talk about a birthday, you talk about a party, you talk about football season, everyone in this country, whether you're rich, poor, Black or white, from the low country or to California, you're feeling the burden of the increased costs we see in America. The price of chicken wings are going to be up for football season. The price of birthday cakes are going to be up. Birthday gifts, the prices are going to be up. And so if people are having to pay more, it's a direct result of the last election and what can change in 7 months. That's how we've got to open simplify. We've got to meet people where they are. And on the note of meeting people where they are, please, Power Lunch folks, do not take your foot off the gas with registration and mobilization because it's going to get us to a good place of participation. If you've seen the recent articles, you will see that Republicans are outpacing us when it comes to registration in very key places all across the country, in particular with young white males. Now, I'm not shocked by this because white men have always been the base of the Republican Party, but that does not mean we cannot talk to them, we cannot engage them, we cannot make our case, and we cannot convince them that you may register as a Republican, but we need you to vote as a Democrat. And so please keep the dialogue and the conversation going because so often I hear as I'm traveling the country, and I just heard it this week twice as I was in 3 different states this week, is that, well, you all do not talk to us. And when you talk to us, you talk at us instead of talking to us or listening to us. So learn how to show up, listen more than you talk, and do not talk at people, but talk with people. Understand their challenges, their threats, and their opportunities, and then insert how we as Democrats or we as good people can be helpful to their challenges.
Okay. I think I can do that. I mean, honestly, it sounds pretty simple, but obviously it's something that we can do. We can do a much better job. So my last question. Oh, there's Catherine. So my last question, and Catherine, did you have
Go
a
ahead.
question for Antjuan? I'll let you.
I was worried about the chicken wings. I got really worried and I wanted to pop in.
It's
Thank
a
you
hook
for your
point,
last
right,
question.
Catherine?
And I mean, it's really a great way to really talk to people about their impact to their personal life. I love it. Now go ahead with your question. I just want to, I told people we're just a little bit behind, but that people are really listening to this. I want to insert one thing is we do all that and we need the DNC and the Democratic, people up there to do their job. And when you talk about voter registration, I am concerned, like when I don't need to worry, I shouldn't have to worry about that. That should be coming out of Ken Martin. It should be the first on the agenda. And then I feel like it's still sort of nonsense coming out, like worried about other things. We would like to see the party just put money into this and get out there and do their thing so we can do our thing. So that for now, I don't want to.
Yeah,
My
so
question, but
I think that's I'll let Antjuan answer that question as my final question. So Antjuan, you can answer the question. You want to say that. So yeah, so what should we expect from
Shouldn't
the
have to
party?
worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, I agree and I disagree.
Okay.
I think we should worry about all things because we're in an unusual business moment, so we can't do business as usual. So we can't expect the Democratic Party to be our savior, unfortunately. More and more people are becoming pro-value and anti-institution. And so with that being said, if we depend on the Democratic Party whose brand is in the shits of the shits right now, then we'll never win an election and we'll never convince folks that we are the people, not the party, offering solutions for everyone. Because it's one thing if I show up as Antjuan Seawright, a concerned person who cares about your quality of life and your well-being. It's another thing if I show up as Democratic strategist or Democrat, whoever Antjuan Seawright, I get a totally different response. So I think people over party is more important in this moment. And when it comes to registration from history until now, the one thing Republicans have always done a hell of a job at is being consistent, one, but number two, not allowing the party to own registration. They created groups, they created entities, they've let other organizations mobilize and organize on their own. And while doing the registration part, they did the education part and brainwashing people about Republican values and with the talking point. And as a result, when they register, they tend to focus on messaging and outreach. And so people automatically assume that the Republican way of life is the thing.
I just want to say, but that's again another place where we follow the rules for registration when it's supposed to be nonpartisan and they don't. But I get your point and exactly what you're saying. Antjuan, this has been really awesome. This, of course, is going to be recorded so folks will be able to go back and listen to it so they can hear all the fantastic points that you made. Don't know how busy your schedule is today, if you can hang around for the after chat, but we'd love it if you could do that. But thank you so much. And I have some other things to talk to you about offline, and we can do that later.
Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, if you can turn your video off and hang out, because I bet you we can continue a great conversation. So I want to make sure we're talking about voter registration, Fennell, that we get to James Walkinshaw. This is his first time in the room. Can we bring up James Walkinshaw, please? And if I seem stable, Fennell, let me continue.
You're stable. Keep on going.
See, look, James Walkinshaw, candidate for CD11. This is really dear to my heart because our Congressman Jerry Connolly had passed away, unfortunately, from horrible cancer. And you have stepped up and you ran and you won the primary and you are our nominee. Let's talk about you and your candidacy and how you're going to fight for Congressional District 11.
Well, thank you, Catherine. It's so great to be here on the Power Lunch. Very excited to be with you all and appreciative of the incredible work and advocacy and fight that you're engaged in. I'm James Walkinshaw. I'm a lifelong Northern Virginian. My grandfather grew up on a farm not too far from here. As you noted, when I was a relatively young man at age 26, I became the chief of staff for Congressman Jerry Connolly. I did that job by his side for 11 years during the Trump administration when we passed the Affordable Care. I'm sorry, during the Obama administration when we passed the Affordable Care Act and brought millions and millions of dollars back here to Northern Virginia in economic development. I was there for most of the first Trump administration, so got kind of the preview of the assaults on our federal government and on our democracy that we're seeing now. In 2019, I ran and flipped a Republican-held seat on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, and for the last 5.5 years, I've represented the Braddock District here on the Board of Supervisors. Your home of Catherine White, and very proud of my work there. I led our effort to ban guns from our libraries and rec centers and parks. We took on the NRA and beat them, passed historic reforms for workers, and we're headed into Labor Day. Very proud of the work that we did to bring collective bargaining to our county employees and enact a prevailing wage ordinance so all the workers on our county contracts get fair wages and benefits and a safe workplace. And then, as you noted, when Congressman Connolly was diagnosed and then announced that he wasn't going to seek re-election, he and I sat down. He encouraged me to consider running, talked it over with my wife and other folks here in the community, and decided to jump in. Unfortunately, he passed away not long after that announcement, and we had a very spirited 10-way Democratic firehouse primary on June 28th of this year. And one of the things I think we all as Democrats in the area can be proud of is that firehouse primary. We shattered Virginia records in terms of voter turnout for that kind of election. We had 39,000 votes cast. To put that into context, the Republicans nominated my opponent on the very same day, and they had fewer than 3,000 votes cast in a high school gym. They almost had more people voting for the student body president of that high school than nominated the Republican candidate for Congress. So I think Democrats are energized and united and excited here in Fairfax and in Northern Virginia, and we're sprinting towards the September 9th special election. Early voting has started. In fact, the satellite locations open across the county today, so there's a lot of opportunity for folks to vote early or vote on September 9th. And, our big task is spreading the word. I feel good about where the race stands. If we have a strong turnout and a strong margin, I think it'll help propel our incredible statewide ticket in November.
Yeah, you have double opportunity as you talk to voters to talk about both elections. And I think maybe you and I are concerned about the same thing is that people are confused. When I remember at the polls, we had to remind people 2 different elections. They're like, we'll vote for you on November 4th, James.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that all the time. And, I remind people I'm excited to vote in November as well, but we got to be excited to vote on September 9th. And, I think we're getting that message out, but we've got, I think we have 11 days to make sure everybody in our community knows about September 9th.
And that's why I wanted to make sure on the call that if people want to get involved, you could be helping get out the vote in our district. It's awesome. And if you don't even live in the district, please donate to James. Also, you can make calls, I'm sure, for James if you have call lines available. And I think your staff is here. Please put that in the chat after if somebody's doing that for you. I want to encourage everybody. Early voting is open, and I have to early vote. I thought about that today because I'm going out of town, right? I'm like, oh boy, I got to vote for early. So making sure that everybody understands this election, and it's on September 9th, that election day. And then you're going to, I hope, help this ticket. Well, I know you're doing a lot, but really get out the vote for the Democratic ticket.
That's right. I am all in for our Democratic ticket in November, and have already made significant financial contributions from my various campaign accounts, and I'm going to be doing everything in my power to support them. We need a big victory to send a message to Washington, the country, around the world about what Virginians feel, how Virginians feel, and think about what's taking place in Washington and everything that you all have discussed here already today.
Right. And I think what I like about your campaign, you really know that the federal workers live in your district. They live here. This is where the temperature is really being felt and rising to understand what the impacts are doing to our county. So I love the how you're talking about it, and Antjuan saying that as well. Like, we really got to let people know that what Democrats have been delivering, but also what this administration plans has done and decimated the federal workers. We see the CDC, our health is impacted. So James, I wish you luck, and everybody make sure you support James, and thank you for coming, and we'll have you back.
All right. Thanks for having me.
See you later. Okay, Carrie, I'm just going to leave it excited about your playbook. It's all about congressional stuff today. So we're really
I know. Let's bring it back.
So I'm going to give you the microphone and let you take off, girl.
I was just so glad to hear Antjuan talking about our elections. They're just so important. And I guess we're kind of referring a little bit to the playbook. It's on COVA Coalition's website. It's not anything, you know, earth-shattering or new, but it is very, very handy for a lot of folks. And I'm really glad to report out from a big meeting that we had down here in Hampton Roads on Sunday. COVA Coalition convened our little garden club, as we call it. We're growing the grassroots, but it's a coalition of groups: Red, Wine, and Blue, Indivisible, COVA Coalition, some of our neighborhood circles that we're developing in neighborhoods, really trying to look at two big problems that we've got, as you know, decades long problems, but that's disengaged citizenry and disaffected voters. I think we can all agree that, especially looking at Norfolk and some true blue districts in Hampton Roads, we've got a turnout problem with these disaffected voters. What are we going to do about it? It's not just something that lives in a campaign season. This is something that grassroots organizers should be addressing 365. So we're kind of taking a community organizing approach. I've had a little background in that myself, as to what we can really do. And we tried it out last year in Suffolk, working on 4 to 5 precincts that we identified with the help of grassroots activists in Suffolk. What we're trying to do is take this model and use it throughout Hampton Roads by targeting 4 to 5 precincts in each House district that also overlaps with CD2. So as Antjuan said, we're being strategic. We're not waiting for leadership to come from the party or from any national organization. We're really grabbing it on our own, following this model. So what does it look like? So we're asking folks to adopt 4 to 5 precincts, each grassroots organization looking at 4 to 5 precincts in a House district that overlaps with CD2. Our big, you know, keeping our eye on the prize. What does it mean to adopt a precinct? Well, we want you to know that precinct. We want you to shake hands and kiss babies. We want you to go to every event, every civic league meeting, every street festival, every neighborhood picnic. Start going. Start to look at that precinct and understand what makes them tick. As a coalition, we're trying really hard to have, as Antjuan mentioned, unified messaging, right? We want to do that. But we also know that a neighborhood in rural Suffolk is going to be very different than a neighborhood at the oceanfront in Virginia Beach. So while we have unified messaging, we want to give it that spin for each neighborhood. How do we do that? By getting to know the precincts. So we're really going to try and be out there. We have turned into data wonks, looking at the numbers behind these precincts. It's easy to get voter turnout data from previous elections and study it. So we're really looking at that. And from that, creating lists of people from our own organizations, from the Indivisibles, the Red, Wine, and Blues, the community circles that we have. Who do we know in those precincts? Let's grab them. Let's turn them into advocates. Let's get them on fire about democracy. And then we're just going to work it up. We're going to start at that level of precinct and make strong House of Delegates race turnout this fall, that we can then reap the benefits next fall and flip CD2. We want to cover all the priority precincts by any means necessary, with leafleting every door, all of the grassroots guerrilla tactics, sidewalk chalking, visibility events. That's what we can afford. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're good at. So that's kind of our model that we're approaching these precincts, and we're asking folks to invest in that by helping COVA Coalition implement this model with our ally groups down here. And it's something that we're really dedicated. And if it works, and we've seen it work, it's none of this is new, but if it works out, we'll be able to replicate this with other coalitions. You know, we're often getting approached by people from outside CD2 saying, "Hey, I got a great idea. We really want to work to build coalitions in CD2. You know, you have a really important election coming up." Okay, thanks for that. What are you going to do about it? So we want to be in a position where we can take those resources that are being offered from the outside and put them to good use. So we're strategizing now. The other thing I kind of wanted to mention, just sort of while we're talking about it, is what does it mean to be a coalition? And that's also kind of in the playbook, is that coalitions really stick together. And one of the things that we're dealing with, and I don't know if every community is dealing with it, but in addition to having like outside groups coming to us to say, how can we help you in CD2 and these upcoming state races, we want to have answers for them. Well, we need to do that collectively. I don't want to move forward without my friends in Indivisible and Red, Wine, and Blue and other grassroots groups, right? We need to have an answer collectively. So we're sticking together. We want to divide and conquer. Everybody takes a little bit so we don't get burned out. We want to honor each other's personalities. Not every group is the same, and that's okay. So we want to tailor our asks to our strengths, right? We want to take turns hosting each other. These indivisible nationwide days of action are freaking exhausting us, okay? So we've got to figure out how we're going to handle it. If a date comes up, COVA Coalition doesn't want to run rallies and protests from now until eternity. We're trying to really get voters engaged beyond the protests and rallies. So we're going to need to take turns. We need to come to some kind of agreement. All right, hey, we're having something on Veterans Day. Who wants to host it? Doesn't have to be the same indivisible chapter every single time. Heidi Dragneff, co-founder of COVA Coalition, has developed an amazing shared calendar. It took us like 3 years to figure out how to do a really solid shared calendar. So these are things that we're investing in as a coalition to really build an infrastructure that'll help us with the House districts this fall, but also we can ride to victory for next fall. And I learned from Susan LeBandabar as coming together with the coalition, bring them all together, but don't give them more work to do. So that's always a struggle. I mean, I don't know how you all are feeling with your coalitions out there. I know this call is filled with grassroots activists. I know you're working hard wherever you are, but it is really hard to get together, try to fill each other's gaps, strengthen each other up, and not give each other a bunch of work to do. So we are trying to play the long game by building up the grassroots. And so that's the model. How can you all help? Well, of course, we keep pitching our October weekend of action. It's probably the biggest ask that COVA Coalition and all of our ally groups in CD2 are asking. We want you to come out, want you to come down to Virginia Beach, October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I know Heidi will drop that in the chat. We've got interest forms. If you want to come as an individual, please fill out the interest form and let us know what you're interested in doing and how you can help. If you're interested in bringing your group down, we have an interest form for organizations to fill out. So you're saying, hey, we're going to bring 40 people down to Virginia Beach. We're going to, we'll need help with housing. We'll need help with transportation. We want you to come down. We have pivotal races. I know many people are focused on the what's going on with the Fairfax School Board and the lawsuits, but we've got a lawsuit of our own down here, Virginia Beach School Board. There are a group of teachers suing the superintendent. And guess who's leading the lawsuit? The attorney running against Mike Feggins. Legitimate lawsuit, publicity stunt, you be the judge, but they're already pulling out all the dirty tricks down here. So we need help. I'm sending out the help flag. Come down here the first weekend of October. We're going to have welcome party on Friday night. We'll be doing a rally and canvassing on Saturday. Saturday night, we'll be doing a gathering activity when we're all done. And then Sunday, we're going to leaflet every door in North Suffolk. We're going to get out the vote. Penny Blue attended our retreat on Sunday, and she made a very good point. There's no electoral college in the state of Virginia, so turnout matters. If I can get good turnout in a true blue district down here in Hampton Roads, I can undo the red turnout in the other district in Hampton Roads. So it is a race for turnout. So that was a great meeting that we had on Sunday. I'm happy to report out and let you know what we're doing down here. And of course, I'm not shy to ask for your help. So.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure we get Susan in here and get started. Thanks you so much, Carrie. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for everything, you guys.
Hand it over to Susan. I want to say Susan LeBandabar, but Susan Wagner, thank you.
And Robbin. So Robbin and I are co-directors of a project that we call Persisterhood. We don't have that much time to talk about it at the moment, but I'm going to put it in a way that actually picks up on everything we've been talking about so far. There are a lot of challenges in front of us, and there are a lot of disappointments so far, but Persisterhood is really one of the projects that is particularly uplifting. And every time we mention the word grassroots, I think of all the thousands and thousands of people, more women than men for sure, who have been part of the grassroots movement. And Persisterhood is going to result in an oral history of all of our actions, what our lives have been like since 2016. And for me, it is really a worthwhile project. And I think when you think about everything you can control and everything you can't control, We all have to keep fighting. There's no question about that. But if you want to participate in something that you know is going to happen and last forever, I really encourage you to participate in Persisterhood. Robbin's going to go over briefly some of the details just to give you an overview of it. And then we will be holding many orientation sessions, which Robbin will tell you about signing up for.
All right. Well, thank you, Susan. So the Persisterhood Oral History Project is documenting the diverse experiences of women who have been politically active in response to pivotal events like the election of 2016. These are our stories of how we are tirelessly working to save democracy. Oral history is the art and discipline of collecting stories of everyday people, not the famous and the powerful, but real people with real lives. It used to be history was defined by those in power, but oral history changed all that by making sure everyone's history is part of the historical record. Well, whose story is often missing? Women. Women are so neglected, and senior women, we're invisible. And grassroots women activists, we're so invisible the mainstream media never sees us. The party barely acknowledges us, but we are the badass women getting stuff done every single day. And this project is collecting our stories and documenting it so that it will be around for the next 100 years. So the Persisterhood Oral History Project really has three parts. The first part is to collect our stories, second is to preserve it, and the third is to promote our history. So how are we collecting our stories? We're doing it through Zoom interviews. So if you are here on the Friday Power Lunch, you have all the technical skills you need to be a part of this project. And since everything is more fun with a friend, our project design is that two people interview each other. You take one interview as you interviewing your friend, and they're acting as the narrator to tell their story. The next time you tell the story and they interview you. How fun is that? We're preserving our stories through our wonderful partnership with George Mason University, their archive. The reason why it's critical that what we're doing is put in an archive is that we're doing these digital interviews and we want them to be accessible in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. If we don't do that, think about a VHS, all the wonderful videos you took of your kids on your VHS camera. If you didn't digitize them, you couldn't use them again. Well, by putting our material into the archive, they will make sure that what we put in is always accessible to everyone. And it's going to be able to be viewing. And we could not ask for a better partner than the George Mason Archive. Their archivists are amazing, and yet we are painfully aware of the attack on history and university. So as we put our stuff in the archives, we're keeping a copy of everything. So we got to cover. Lastly, the Persisterhood Project will do outreach to folks to let them know that our stories have been collected. We want to make sure that writers, poets, songwriters, screenwriters, movie writers, producers, historians all know that when they're looking for examples of strong characters, people making a difference, strong women, they can look to these, to our stories. Now, don't start thinking about who's going to play you on the Netflix special yet, but who knows? We believe in the transformative power of oral history to inspire and educate future generations. So how can you participate? The first step is to attend one of our orientation sessions so we can teach you how to do an oral history interview, basically know enough to be dangerous. We have 4 of them coming up in September and October. I've been putting the dates in the chat. If you have a friend who you want to be an interview partner with, come together and do it. Heck, our own Laura Mack brought her Nova Blue Squad to one of the orientations, and they did it as a group. I see people in the audience who have been attending it, and I do want to brag on one person who I got to hear her story, Linda, who's in the audience tonight. It was so amazing learning of her story. She is a vagabond political operative, traveling from state to state, working on campaigns during her retirement. I tell you, she's got her own political Peace Corps going on. Yay, her. Well, learning all these stories. Of course, our Ms. Margaret will be participating. But I want to ask all of you, put your camera on gallery. All these faces you see here, everybody has a story to tell. And we would like everybody here to be a part of this project. I'll stop there, Susan.
And I'm going to say that our next guest is Ann Timmons, and she is somebody who took history and put it into a show that is going to premiere in, is it DC or Virginia?
It's in Arlington, Virginia, so it's
Yep.
close in.
Close enough, right? On the October 17th, and as I've told her, I am actually coming for opening night because when we prepared for this interview, I was so blown away by everything I learned from Ann. So Ann, first tell us a little bit about It's My Party, and then I have two follow-up questions that relate to the Persisterhood Project. But tell everybody a little bit about it.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you all for inviting me to join you today. It's My Party is a play that I wrote originally to celebrate the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment. You may recall there was a big event, a big year, 2020, the centennial suffrage year, which kind of got thwarted by COVID. But I wrote this play to show how two different groups of women with radically different strategies of how to accomplish this feat actually worked to get it accomplished. They kept their eyes on the prize. They had rivalries for sure. There was some drama. There was picketing. There were parades. There were protests. But they worked to get this amendment passed so that women could get the vote. And it's just a fascinating story of the history of women who had vision, and boy, did they have persistence, and they kept going in spite of being jailed, in spite of threats of all kinds. They went on hunger strikes. They were force fed. You know, it was not a good time for them, but they persisted, and they ultimately won.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the type of research you did to put this all together, because I remember in our conversation you discussing the fact that, you know, certain renditions are accurate and certain renditions take liberties. We all know that right now historical fiction is amazingly popular in books. And, you know, if you speak to somebody who was actually involved in that organization or movement, they say, oh, they don't have it all right. And then the rest of us who don't know enough say, oh, that sounds like a good story. So tell us your thinking and tell us your research.
Well, yes, there are a lot of there are other plays out there about the suffrage movement. Particularly, a lot of them were popping up around the suffrage centennial. There was this movie Iron-Jawed Angels that came out a number of years ago that is based on the book by one of the women who was a part of the movement. But they took so many liberties because, you know, Hollywood. But people think that's the story. So I'm constantly having to disabuse them of some of those notions. And then there were movies about the English suffragettes who were violent, who engaged in violent activities, which is very different than the American suffragists because they never, you know, they never threw bricks. They never did any of that stuff. So I looked at the biographies, the authorized biographies, the newest biographies, the latest research for the main characters in my play. And thank goodness those biographers had access to the private papers. They really did a lot of the research that I built upon. I also did some primary research in Washington at the what was then the Belmont Paul Museum. They had an archive of all the letters of the National Women's Party, and also the Library of Congress has a whole huge collection of National Women's Party and National American Women's Suffrage Association papers. But the biographers had access to the letters written by the women who were participating. And as I said to Robbin, I think at one point I said, look, we don't write letters anymore. Who's going to know our history, right? Our emails will be gone. And that's why I thought, you know, the Persisterhood Project is great because our video stories, right? That's the equivalent of those 19th, early 20th century letters that people wrote on and on and on which biographers can do the research, write the biographies, and then those of us who are taking the next step can use that to as the basis of creating our plays, creating our historical dramas, as it were.
You know, and recently, I would say in the last 5-6 years, politics and art have had a tremendous overlap, and it's been brought to the attention of, you know, us usual voters, citizens of the country. So we had on the Friday Power Lunch a guy named Ken Grossman who wrote a book about how politics influences art and art influences politics. Do you think that the type of protest, the type of posters, banners, the things that were used during the suffragettes movement had impact, or do you think the violence was the way to go? I'm just curious what you think about
well, the Americans never participated in violence. I mean, the police were violent against them, right? They hauled them off into jail. That was a violent act, but the women didn't engage in violence. They had, however, words, the power of words. And, you know, this was during World War I. And the most famous banner was Kaiser Wilson. How long will women have to wait for the vote at home? And then there were banners saying, you are meeting now with the leaders, right? When he was doing the peace conference, you are meeting now with the leaders of all these countries where women have the vote, right? These big banners with all this writing on them. And boy, that really got people's attention. The Kaiser Wilson banner actually was super controversial. And a lot of people turned against the National Women's Party there at that point. But then some of them allied with the more conservative group, the National American Women's Suffrage Association, who didn't do the picketing, but they did the lobbying. So there was a lot going on. They were, as I think I said earlier, they were belts and suspenders, right? They were doing the two different things. They were lobbying, they were talking to members on the Hill, they were also organizing like crazy in the states, right? So there was the statewide push as well as the federal push. The two different groups had two different tactics. The more radical suffragists who were protesting, picketing in front of the White House were more interested in the federal amendment. And then the more conservative people who were also lobbying on Capitol Hill were also organizing in the states. So it was a multi-prong approach, but each of them kept to kind of their own lane, right? And they kept their eye on what they were doing and their strategy. And they didn't, as Antjuan would say, they weren't pulled off message. You know, they kept on that message. And
you know, I love the fact that there was pushback, because we always get that. There's no question. You know, some of us in the grassroots movement actually come up with creative ideas, and we get all this tremendous pushback. And so we're taking, you know, our fight on our own because there was just too much pushback to the point where, you know, it's sort of like, you know, just say no, just to say no kind of thing. And I love the fact that we, and it's very much represented here, is we have decided there's just too much of that. And the pushback just paralyzed us in a lot of ways. And I think we were hoping that that wouldn't be the case, but it is the case. So I love that you highlighted that. So I'm just going to circle a little bit back to Persist to Hurt, because you've been a little helpful to us. If you were going to use these archival material, what would you like to hear in the renditions that we're each going to give? Are you interested in what we were wearing? Are you interested in how long it took us to get there? Are you interested? What would help form, from an artistic perspective, a good way to tell the story? What kind of information would you be interested in?
I would like to know what brought you to the Persisterhood. I would like to know what brought you to Network Nova or the Power Podcast Lunch or, you know, the COVA Coalition, you know, however you're hooking it. I would like to know how you met this person who's interviewing you at an Indivisible event. You know, I would like to know your motivations for getting off the couch, right? As we have been discussing, for getting out there and in spite of the pushback, for persisting. right? For
I think
persisting,
that's
you know,
true.
and it's going to be, it's going to be your family, it's going to be your community, whatever. And then the specifics of that story, right? Because in general, I think a lot, you know, the next generation, whatever, or, you know, the price of chicken wings, but, you know, specifically or maybe what was that moment that it sparked for you that you said,
Right,
I
right.
gotta become a part of this. I gotta do something.
And then, you know, picking up on that, and then how did you persist? Because, you know, how did you arrive? And then how did you stay?
Yes.
Because
Oh yeah.
that's
Yeah.
part of being persistent. And when you think particularly about movements, you know, Susan B. Anthony, it doesn't matter who you mention, but those people didn't just get what they were trying to get accomplished right away. They did have to
No,
persist, right? And
they persisted.
particularly
Yeah.
when it comes to women's issues, somehow or another, we have to persist more. It's a good thing we have more strength. And I see
Yes.
Catherine's here, so I'll let
Oh,
her
I
finish us off.
love that last question, Susan, was spectacular. I think Robbin also agrees in the team. But I do want, before we talk about the not so normal, could we leave with a few heroes, two heroes to think about that you think that can inspire us that didn't do things quite normally?
Right. Right.
Oh, is that the question for
That's for
me?
you, Anne.
That's for
That's
you,
for me.
Judy.
Well, I would say the two protagonists of my play, Carrie Chapman Catt, who was the president of National American Women's Suffrage Association, who went on to found the League of Women Voters, right after women got the vote, and then Alice Paul, her sparring partner, who founded the National Women's Party, who went on to write, as soon as that vote passed and was ratified, she wrote the Equal Rights Amendment, which we're of course still waiting for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she persisted her whole life. She lived quite a long time after that, and she kept persisting and pushing that ERA. So I think they're both shining examples of persistence.
Well, I love that. And we're persistent here in getting to make sure we get to the after chat. I'm pretending like it's a little bit before 1 o'clock because this has been a great Freedom Friday with everybody. And, you know, so don't worry. Well, let's say Ann Timmons to see your play. Thank you very much for coming. And we are going to make sure we're there that matinee. We're really excited. And Susan Wagner, what a delight. I mean, the project you're working on and tying it down this part of history, I'm, you know, making sure that we record history is really important. Carrie, the work you're doing down there in the congressional districts, just incredible. When we think about planning ahead and really that persistent fight and looking at things differently, not so normal, right? And Antjuan telling us about like how message different, the price of chicken wings is great, but in general, he's telling us, don't wait for anybody. You said that last week, Fennell. We can't wait for anybody, right? We have to do it. Stop whining. You don't see it, do it. You don't have a sign, make a sign, right?
Right. This isn't normal. Our response can't be normal.
No, and look, you know, this thing about voter registration, I'm going to push back a little bit. We do think there's some things, initiatives can come from a larger thing too and help us out. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, it feels like, you know, we're supposed to do everything and clean the ship and drive everything. And it's just, it is a lot. So, but I want to say thank you to everybody in the room. Follow us on in our Substack. Make sure you subscribe to everywhere we are because it is about communication. And next week, I want to make sure you all know that we have Antonia Scanton here. She is a communication strategist. She's on Substack, Reframing America. Antonia will be here with some great messaging. We also will have Jamie Lockhart of Planned Parenthood really updating us. We kind of sometimes they lost on the issues. What's happening to women right now is real. We have somebody running for office in Virginia, Winsome Sears, that doesn't believe in contraception, doesn't believe in anything that women should have agency about their bodies. We got to make sure people see that contrast. And we will also have the Shenandoah Power Pack here, and we'll be talking about those candidates. But lastly, we'll have Scott Wheeler here. He's in the room today. He is talking about moving more citizens to DC to talk to the people in Congress and his DC field trip initiative. He'll be here next week. So I want to make sure that you have a great weekend. Happy Labor Day, May Day. Stick with us in the after chat. Dennis, am I forgetting anything, team?